Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is episode 137, The Psychology of Horror Movies. I'm your host, Eric Lee, and I am joined, as always, by
Mike Campbell
and
Liz Williams.
All right, so this is a bit of an unusual departure. This is a clever conceit that our own Mike Campbell came up with. Mike, why don't you go ahead and describe what we're going to be doing here?
Well, my conceit was inspired by Eric Lee, so I'm going to hand my inspiration right back to you, or
I had nothing to do with
throw my inspiration right back at you when Eric found a really, really fascinating infographic that he posted to our website in February of 2018. And I just happened to be scrolling around on our website because we do have a pretty cool little section of the website called infographics. And there are some really, really fascinating infographics. But this one in particular stood out to me because this is called The Psychology of Why We Like Horror Movies. And there are 8 distinct theories about why we like horror movies, why we as human beings gravitate to this subgenre of film.
Yeah,
and I thought, wow, that's so fascinating. And each one of them had a different of enough wrinkle that I thought, geez, we should really explore this further and see where we fit within these 8 profiles and see what films we think would fit within these 8 profiles.
Yeah, and shout out to Ashley Hirusina, who was the artist and designer behind this.
Right.
So, in the offhand chance that that Ashley, if you listen to this podcast, thanks for this fantastic poster infographic piece.
Yeah.
Because it is a
really cool.
fascinating way of just trying to figure out, specifically, why do we do this?
Right.
What do we get out of it?
Well, I will tell you why we do it and why we get what we get out of it. Because what I found in my research was horror fans are super smart, they are B, very empathetic, and they are C, the most well-adjusted human beings you could possibly find. And the more horror films you watch, the more well-adjusted you will be. And this was borne out in a Psychology Today article from last month.
Oh, really?
Because I'm a regular subscriber to Psychology Today. So
I'm sure you
I
are.
was reading it, and apparently behavioral scientist Colton Scrivener, which sounds like a horror movie name, he investigated whether horror movie fans were more or less psychologically resilient during COVID-19 lockdowns than non-fans. And they found that, yes, indeed, people who watch more horror films did indeed report less psychological distress because people are better at managing their own fear and anxiety through engaging with recreational fear. And I was like, well, that's the name of this podcast. It's going to be Recreational Fear.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think all of the 8 categories that we're going to talk about today kind of get into that recreational fear because each of them have a different take on that that very pleasant and sometimes not so pleasant distraction in your life.
Yeah, and I think it also sort of explains why we're able to put up with stupid shenanigans on the big screen, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because it puts as an observer, it puts you in the eye, and sometimes it will go. I think one of the reasons why Shaky Cam was so successful is it puts you in the eye of the in the scene, right?
Yeah,
in media
it's
ray.
literally you. It's first person,
right?
It's you're doing it.
But a lot of the times, you have the omniscience to have information in advance a lot of the times, and you go, don't go into the basement, you fucking idiot. Don't split up the party.
Right.
Oh, what are you doing? Don't do that. That's stupid.
Yeah, it's so true. Like when you're watching Gosford Park, you're like, well, I could give a shit less what happens to any of these people.
Although I think
Right.
there are some curious things. Like sometimes the things that get me the most anxious are the awkward romantic things.
Sure.
Where that I think there are some like if that will make you kind of squirm, but it's not the outright fear,
right?
That you're not going, oh man, that doesn't get your I can't watch, or you're yelling at your
Yeah.
at the screen, or making exclamations through the whole thing.
Right.
You tend not to do that for your average drama.
Right.
So
Liz, Liz, where are you at with the psychology of horror?
You know what? Since we divided this up, some of the ones that I have are definitely, they always say it's almost like a running joke now that like women are comforted by true crime, and you see all those TikToks of things like that, and that's totally me. But I feel like everyone that I watch or any true crime things, I'm like prepping for what would I do.
Right.
Yep.
That's what it is for me. So heck yeah.
Yeah. Creating the rules of engagement, as it were.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Part of the infographics, in addition to the theories that we are going to be describing, all 8 of them.
Yes.
They also there are some other things that they describe, and it's kind of interesting where it describes the types of watching. Where the first element it says is gore watching, which is high in seeking sensation, low in empathy, and that males. The male id strongly aligns with the killer.
Interesting.
And then the second point that they make is thrill watching, which is also heightened sensation seeking, but also heightened empathy.
Right.
And this is sympathizing with the victims. And this says more I think the females have more id or are more aligned to this thinking. And then independent watching, increased empathy, and then you get high positive effect of overcoming fears, just like what we were just talking about with the pandemic.
Right.
Is that your confidence of getting through a horror movie? It's like, well, this can get me through a rough day of
right.
Of having to
or
deal
like
with.
At least I'm not in this person's situation.
Exactly. And then that also falls into the fourth thing that they talk about, which is problem watching, which again increased empathy and reduces the negative effect of feeling helpless.
Right. So all I'm hearing from this is the more you listen to the Scariest Things podcast,
The better off you're going to be.
The better off you're going to be as a human being, frankly.
Yeah,
not just
pretty much.
This is your bi-weekly counseling session with Liz, Eric, and Mike.
or at the very least, rationalization as to why you like horror movies.
Yeah,
we will help you rationalize
and defend
away any of the shame that you have from watching too many horror films.
and I know that by the time this gets released, we will be past Thanksgiving. But this is the kind of a thing that you could sort of like if your uncle goes, why do you watch that shit? And it's like, well, as a matter of fact, this is good for my psyche. And then you can rattle off these things.
Or if your aunt says, hey, have you ever seen Jaws? That is such a scary movie. You can say, why, yes, I have.
And in fact, this applies to this theory. So,
all right, well, let's bust into these theories.
Well, let's.
No.
Okay, so this is how we're going to do this.
Oh, yes. There's 8.
Yeah. There are 8 theories, and we're going to approach them one at a time, and each of us will come up with an example movie
that we think fits.
Fits the theory in question.
Yes.
And I think we are going to lead off.
Yes.
Who's got the
I've
lead
got
off
the
position?
first one.
Liz
Psychoanalytic.
has the first one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, according to our infographic, the first theory is psychoanalytic, and it says it came from the primitive id suppressed by the civilized ego. So I was like, okay, I got to Google that.
You know what? I did the same thing. I was like, well, I remember taking a psychology 120 class in college.
Yeah, that's about where
and
I
I
was. It was
kind of
like
remember
and I don't remember.
id. I don't know what the primitive id is, though.
Nope.
So what did you dig up?
Well, I went to, I guess, like the Freud Society in the UK, and I'm going to get real deep into it here. So
hell yeah.
Freud's text, The Question of Lay Analysis from 1926, he wrote, "The sexual life of adult women is a dark continent for psychology." And
A
dark continent. So the question that he was preoccupied with was, what do women want? So, and then the mystery of feminine persisted with the advancement of psychoanalytical thought, and the perception of the unknown frequently drives women in the depiction of dark tales. So, the easiest way to say this would be like vampires equals sex, werewolf equals the beast within, things like that. But then there is a philosopher named Julia Kristeva, and she says that horror films portray unclean and taboo elements of womanhood and reveal the entwined dual system of eros. So I'm going deep into like what's going on with women in horror films, because I am a woman, and that it also is the breakdown in meaning caused by the loss of boundaries between the self and the other. So my choice for this is Claire Denis's Trouble Every Day, which I talked about in Cannibalism or Bridge Too Far or something.
Yeah.
And the reason I picked this is because there is a woman named Corey who is suffering from vampirism, and she uses sex and eats these people in the middle of having sex with them. She seduces them to have sex. They are having sex, and then in the middle of it, she
consumes them,
rips out a guy's tongue with her teeth, and bites him to death. So I felt like that, fit the loss of boundaries between the self and other, and that the sexual life of adult women is a dark consonant for psychology. So
I'm gonna watch myself when I'm around you, Liz. Okay.
I had to go all into the Freud on this one.
Apologies to the Freud Society. Eric, what's your take on
they discussed this movie in a
they really did.
A presentation that they had. Yeah, they divided it into a 6-week session where they tackled identity, love, pregnancy, powers, vampires, and demons. This one shows up in the love section, along with the two other examples they gave is Audition and The Hounds of Love. So Audition, we know she's catfished and killed. Hounds of Love is she murders people to keep a boyfriend.
Okay.
Well,
in that case, you're welcome, Freud Society, for letting us do your work for you.
Indeed.
Okay, Eric, what is your take on the psychoanalytic primitive id?
Well, I'm just taking the description of coming from the primitive id suppressed by the civilized ego, and nothing says that's too much. Nothing says that more to me than lycanthropy. And so I'm going, my pick is The Howling by Joe Dante from 1981, which is bestial. It's repressed werewolf, feral savagery, and lust, and it comes out periodically. It is the repression, and sort of in this case, this is the male anger and aggressiveness. It's rougher and meaner than far more brutal than its more sophisticated sibling in American Werewolf in London, which I also had thought about. But I thought that nothing says id and the selfishness and the aggressiveness of the id being than a werewolf movie, and that they have, and in this case that the werewolves in The Howling are they enjoy being werewolves, unlike say other werewolves who feel like that, why did this happen to me? I'm cursed. They kind of revel in the fact that I'm a big bad wolf,
right?
And that the rest of the culture, the civilization's holding me down. So I went with The Howling.
Okay,
good choice.
After my very meager research onto this question, I zoomed in on the concept of animalistic urges and people otherwise obsessed, right? So like things that would take you out of your normal. Your normal societal functioning and bring about sort of non-thinking obsession. And of course, I went with the 1990 Rob Reiner. Yes, that Rob Reiner film Misery.
Oh, interesting.
Because Kathy Bates is sort of like, I mean, that to me seemed to be the perfect embodiment of the primitive id, a very literary and analytical version of the primitive id, but nonetheless. Not thinking, not and otherwise obsessed with, singularly obsessed with, of course, the great James Caan.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to catharsis.
Number 2.
Okay, so I've got catharsis, and
Okay.
so the second theory is giving people a chance to purge their negative emotions through watching horror movies. This is wish fulfillment. There are movies out there that allow the audience, to empathize and even place yourself in the role of the protagonist or even the villain, and
Right.
vicariously live out the violence dished out in the movie.
Uh-huh.
This is also in close alignment with condition number 3, which is excitation, and condition 5, which is disposal and alignment. We'll talk about those later.
Yes.
But this mechanism helps you transfer some of the stress of your work or your social life and see brutally displaced on some fictional people on screen, so you don't have to do it yourself.
Right.
Maybe not the mentally healthiest of the profiles, but it prevents you from acting out on these things in real life. Hey, if that works, all the better.
Well, and that's why I think it might be one of the it might be one of the most healthy ones.
It might be, as so long as you don't act on these
Yes,
impulses,
yes.
right? Or that if you have these impulses, that you see them on the screen and let that do the work for you.
Yes. Walk up to the edge, but don't actually jump.
So my pick for this was the Belko experiment.
Oh,
This is workplace horror fantasy. Take out your boss, take out your annoying colleagues under the cover of an ultimatum where it doesn't matter. It's like you're being told, go ahead and kill your colleagues.
Right.
It's okay because last one standing gets out. And that's, I think there is something, there's a vicarious voyeuristic thing with the Belko experiment.
You don't even get any money. You just
just
get out.
Yeah, right. and in a way, I mean, there are some other ones like Mayhem.
Right.
Does the same kind of thing. Squid Game.
Sure.
Certainly does that. All
Yeah.
these kinds of things. But I thought the Belko experiment was one of those kinds of things. Like for 2 hours of wish fulfillment, it's like, if you've just had a bad day at work, it's like Belko experiment. That'll get it out of your
I
system.
love the Belko experiment, and
Yep.
I don't want to spoil the film, but I think it's due for a Belko experiment part 2. Because I definitely think you could easily make a Belko experiment part 2.
I think you could do
Right.
it, and I don't think you even need to use the same characters. You just hold it somewhere else, and you
Right.
spin it a little differently.
And you further explain the story, like why is this happening?
Why is this in?
Yes.
It's like this was like in Colombia or Brazil or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
The building. Anyway, so mine was
Right.
Belko experiment. Liz, what's your catharsis?
I picked the purge.
There you
All
go.
of
yeah.
them. Yeah. Like any
Hell
purge.
yeah.
Yeah. I just picked the purge. It's kind of the same exact thing.
Yep.
Going out there to just murder people with no consequences.
I think particularly the first
latest
purge. I think
the first one.
which was the when if you're from the minority standpoint and you're watching the black dude going out there and it's like it's time for some payback. It's like, yeah, go get him.
Right.
Yep.
And so that was and that is it's like I shouldn't feel this way, but you're rooting for this guy just to wreck house.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, which is a very common theme that runs throughout all the Purge
Yeah,
films.
and in this case,
Yeah,
it's the
Pick
protagonist
anyone
fighting
you
back.
want, really.
Yeah. Exactly. I took a very literal approach to this, and this was the first thing that popped into my mind. This was a 1978 film called Day of the Woman, also known as Eric's favorite movie, I Spit on Your Grave. Well, and this, of course, involves an aspiring writer who is repeatedly gang raped and humiliated and left for dead by 4 men. But she systematically hunts each and every one of the men down and kills them in a nasty, brutish, horrifying way. And I'm not a woman, obviously, but I did empathize with her plight, and I empathized with her wanting to go out and kill all of these horrible hillbilly miscreants from, I think it was upstate New York.
Yeah.
And so this was, for me, a great way to purge those negative emotions
Yeah,
through.
this one,
I Spit
think
on Your Grave.
I think our next one, you could have easily put "I Spit on Your Grave" under the next one, which is now it's your turn.
Yes. All right. So this is excitation transfer. And the description is when you have negative feelings in the movie that intensifies with happy emotions when the hero wins. And you're right. It probably could have been. And you're also right in that, I mean, this to me is really the pure embodiment of the final girl trope.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You root, you cheer, you're invested in the person's survival. And when they actually survive, that's your chemical, that's your dopamine reward, right?
Yes.
They survive, you're vindicated, they're vindicated, you're happy because they have made it through this gauntlet of, killers and villains and monsters and Bigfoots and UFOs and everything else in between.
This is victory by horror movie.
This is victory by horror movie. I chose the 1980 independent slasher film directed by Sean Cunningham, Friday the 13th, because I think Adrienne King is probably the best final girl to ever do it, right? You root for her throughout the film. She's the most competent. She's the most analytical. She's the most empathetic character. And she, of course, has to go head to head with the Betsy Palmer, but she eventually makes it out. And I also wanted to give a quick plug to Adrienne King because Adrienne King, unbeknownst to me until recently when I was listening to the Fangoria podcast, she is actually a fellow Oregonian, and she has a wine company in Southern Oregon known as Crystal Lake Wines. So,
Nice.
what I'm advocating here for is not just that people should go watch Friday the 13th for excitation transfer, but the Scariest Things podcast needs to do a wine-related.
We're gonna have to get a post because that would go well with because
I like that idea.
we did the Profondo Rosso cocktail.
That's right.
We have to stump for
I know.
Crystal Lake wines.
I think we need to order a case of Crystal Lake wines, try them all out, and have Adrienne King on the podcast because she is down just outside of Medford.
So it could be a port.
Yeah,
At that point, which would
potentially,
be awesome.
potentially,
Yeah, because that's that great. If she's on like near Bandon on the
No. She's like in Medford. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The drier side. The drier side. So Eric, what did you have for excitation transfer?
Well, I was thinking along the same lines as you.
Okay.
That this is where the final girls reside.
Yes.
So I went
100%.
with You're Next.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have a collision.
Oh.
I have a backup. I have Your Next also.
Yeah.
But I got a backup.
I also have a backup just in case.
A backup to
Is your
Liz's
backup
backup to the
ready or
backup.
not?
No, my backup is Revenge. So, which similar to I Spit on Your Grave, I think is Revenge is a rape revenge fantasy. But Your Next is Sharni Vinson absolutely taking it to the villains and outdoing them at their own game, tricking and trapping and overpowering the bad guys who don't know what they're in for, and it feels so good. And particularly, the blender
Right.
moment. Oh, that's awesome. And
Yep.
and when seeing her traps pay off, it's just you get that vicarious like, yeah, it's like rooting for the bad guys to die, and particularly when you realize that who the real true baddies in this thing are, the masterminds before, and it's like, oh, there's no death good enough for these guys.
Right.
You just take them out, and that is certainly excitation transfer 100%. And you kind of feel dirty thinking that way, but you go.
Yep.
But at the same time, you're rooting hard for. And she is, I think, in my mind, the most
One of the best final girls.
competent or powerful final girls, because I think a lot of other final girls become brave in the moment.
Right.
They become heroic when they absolutely have to.
Right.
Where in Your
She was
Next,
like, oh no, I've been training for this.
right? She's a survivalist.
Right.
It's like you just messed with the wrong girl.
Yep.
So, anyways,
That's true.
Yeah, You're Next, Liz. So you
So that's what I had.
So your alternate was.
My alternate is Ready or Not. When
Yes.
Samara Weaving takes out the
Aw,
entire
yeah.
family, and Eric's girlfriend wins the day.
I love me some Samara Weaving.
Yep. So, but Your Next was absolutely my number one pick, but Ready or Not in kind of the same way. She becomes a final girl more in the moment than the girl in Your Next, but still you are cheering and rooting for her.
Yep.
Once you realize what kind of situation she's in.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yep.
taking on the house full of losers.
Yeah, taking on the house full of crazy people who are trying to kill her.
Yep.
Swinging,
All right.
swinging to
Oh, we're back
Liz.
to me?
Yep.
Okay. So the next topic is curiosity and fascination, where it just says something exists outside of normal behavior. And the little graphic is funny. There's like a guy running with like a snake tongue and another one following him going, so weird. So the film that I picked for this was I was trying to find weird outside normal behavior. I picked Mandy.
Oh, nice. I gave that. I
yeah.
did give that a thought.
Yeah.
I gave Mandy a thought.
Okay.
I picked Mandy because it's super weird.
Yeah.
You can't take your eyes off it.
True.
It's super cool, and no one is behaving in what would be called normal behavior.
Hyper stylized.
Oh yeah.
Hyper stylized.
For
and
sure.
A great film. So Mandy is my choice.
All right. My choice is a 1973 film directed by Ted Post that we talked about in the context of horror moms. This This is The Baby. This is a film, if you didn't listen to the Horror Moms episode, this involves a social worker reeling from the loss of her architect husband.
Yeah.
Who investigates the eccentric, psychedelic Wadsworth family consisting of a mother, 2 daughters, and an adult son with the apparent, I use that in quotes, mental capacity of an infant. This movie is batshit crazy, and this exists way, way outside of normal behavior.
Yeah.
This is super abnormal behavior, really interesting. Probably on the edge of the horror universe, but when you watch it, you will be horrified.
Yeah, that is so weird.
Yeah.
I almost thought you were going to go with La Grande Buffet.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
right, which we talked about in
It's
food horror.
another weird
Food
movie.
horror.
Yeah. My pick is it's like when you have to go weird,
Yeah.
I have to go David Cronenberg.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going with 1983's Videodrome.
Oh, yeah. Super weird.
It's got taboos layered on top of taboos. The plot is it actually you can make sense of the plot, but it's wild and crazy. Sex with a television, sticking your hand in your belly to drag a gun out of it, and then having the gun meld to your arm. This is a movie probably best enjoyed with mushrooms, or if you watch it on mushrooms, you might just check out, and that would be that it is a deep,
Might be too much.
funky dive. That is the Long Live the New Flesh, Videodrome, about as weird as it gets. Curiosity and fascination, and it is one of those movies because as a young kid you heard about. It's like this movie's just not right.
Right,
There's
right,
just something-
right.
It's like, and it was hated. I think Roger Ebert just hated upon this movie.
Right,
And
right.
it was like, why? What is it about this movie? I've got to see it. It's taboo.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It is
Videodrome.
taboo. Yep. For sure.
Good choice.
Okay, so is it my turn? Am I next?
Yes.
All right. So this next one, this is condition number 5. This
Yes.
is disposal and alignment theory. This is in the enjoyment of punishing those who deserve it. So
Very similar to excitation transfer.
Yeah.
But I put this as like the other one was like, yeah, you're rooting, you're having fun.
Yep.
This one I put as it's not fun.
no, yeah, this is probably where it's like. I was trying to figure out where do you place like your Night of the Living Dead endings, right? Where it's just like the kick in the nuts,
Right.
or the Mist, or the movies that just make you feel.
Right.
It's like God, that makes me feel just horrible. But this
Right.
is
Got one
so
here.
This is my comments here were horror movies don't need a happy ending per se, but it is awfully satisfying seeing somebody evil and awful getting their just rewards.
Hell yeah.
It's this is another one where it's victory by horror movie.
Right.
Plain and simple. For a fan of either the B movie sleaze or the sophistication of an A24 psychological horror movie, when the underdog protagonists take down a villain, and the bigger, the badder, the better. So
Yep.
I've got a bunch of them that I could have listed here. I don't know if I'm going to collide with you, Mike. I got
No.
Day of the Dead.
No.
Specifically, Captain Rhodes. He
Yes.
totally deserved it.
He deserved it.
He
Heck.
was an asshole. That guy was the worst. And boy, did he get and when he gets torn apart and he goes, choke on it. You go, yeah, get him, zombies. And that was it. And again, it makes you feel kind of dirty, but that's the whole thing. It's
Exactly.
like
Well,
it's
100%.
disposal and alignment theory.
Yep.
This is you get the you living vicariously. It's not like you want to see this happen to real people in real life, but seeing because you know it's fake. But that was cool. I got my backups were like a mile deep on this one too.
And Captain Rhodes made it into our
Our characters we love to hate.
characters we
Yep.
love to hate. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
So Liz,
Okay, I went super, super dark because even though you are glad to see people get punished, you do not come out feeling good. Because I picked Last House on the Left.
Oh.
yeah, they totally deserved what's coming.
Yeah,
Yep.
they deserve what's coming, but you still feel kind of gross and dirty
Yes.
at the end of the movie anyway because you have just been through a super traumatic experience.
Both
So,
of them, both of the,
Yep.
Yeah.
the last out, but the original Wes Craven one.
The
in
original
particular.
is the one I picked
Oh my
because I don't.
god, yeah.
I think I don't know if I even saw the remake.
The remake is pretty gnarly.
It's
I bet.
it's rough. It's
Okay. Rougher than the original?
Conceptually,
I don't know,
but
The
it's
original has, like 70s to me, like it's the Maniac original versus the Maniac remake. If you're in the 70s, there's already like a layer of sleaze on top. So
it's nasty sauce on top of a
it's
sleaze
nasty
burrito.
sauce. Yes, exactly. So Last House on the Left is my choice for that one.
All right.
The
All right.
72.
So I chose a film looking at disposal and alignment because I looked at the idea of having the hero come up against almost insurmountable odds, right? So, like, obviously, killing a villain that is insurmountable provides even sort of added satisfaction. And this is a film that was filmed in Oregon, filmed in Astoria, filmed in Portland, and we've only touched lightly upon
Goonies?
it. This is The Green Room. And
Oh yeah,
because there is nothing better than a killing than a Nazi killing.
That's
and
right. Patrick
Patrick Stewart, or as he prefers to be known in the film, The Big P Stew, he is so horrible as Darcy, the Nazi.
Yeah.
He is so horrible, so awful. And when he finally gets it, the young upstart punk rock band who is trying to scrape together 2 nickels
and survive.
and they are truly up against insurmountable odds in a pack of, meth-addled skinheads. When he finally gets it, you are so
you cheer.
totally satisfied because you're like, this goddamn Nazi, he's got to get it, and he does get it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. But if you haven't seen The Green Room, I highly recommend it because it has
It's on my top 25.
it has a certain level of authenticity that a lot of films do not have.
It is intense.
Yeah, it's super intense. Super intense.
Rest in peace, Anton Yelchin.
Yes.
This one I had some fun honorable mentions. I also had Curse of the Demon, aka Passing the Curse Turd. Right? It's like, ooh, curse is in your pocket now, buddy.
Yep.
A lot of satisfaction out of that, and also the entire Armitage family in Us.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically Rose. When Rose gets it, it's like, you had it totally coming. Right. So you just double cross and backstab her. Right. It's like you just rot.
Yep. That's true. Yeah, those are both great. All right, moving on to the next one. This is the sensation psychological theory, where you have greater interest in exciting things, aka roller coasters. This one is, I looked up the sensation theory, and I came across a 1980 a dissertation paper written by a woman named Emily Edwards. Emily, if you are hanging around listening to this podcast,
Emily,
we would love to have you on the podcast. She was doing her dissertation at the University of Tennessee at the time, and she talked extensively about a researcher from 1979 who actually came up with the idea of sensation theory in horror films, a guy named Marvin Zuckerman. And he, of course, deduced that this whole thing was just sort of a chemical need for excitement.
dopamine.
So that's the reason why, in large part, in a very, very broad way, that you watch the horror films is because it elicits a chemical response. And the more exciting, the more fast-paced, the higher the chemical response should indeed be. This one is a little bit different, I think, than almost all the other categories because some of the other categories aren't necessarily exciting, fast-paced, thrilling. It's not a roller coaster that you're after. It's very different things.
It's the spike of a jump scare or the horrifying moment where this is continued pressure,
right,
and release,
right,
pressure and release.
Yep. And so I chose the 2016 South Korean action horror film Train to Busan because this whole film, largely, save for a couple scenes, takes place on a train.
Yep.
And it is
white knuckles.
It is white knuckles, but it is fast zombies from the jump. They come onto the screen almost immediately in the film, and they do not leave until the end of the film, and it is constant. And these things move so fast.
Yeah.
So fast. If you are not excited by this, then you do not have a pulse.
100% in agreement. That's a great pick.
Yeah, 2016's Train to Busan.
So my pick was the first R-rated movie that I ever got to see in a theater without sneaking in. And this was 1987's Aliens.
Oh, yeah.
There may not be a bigger thrill ride ever made for the big screen. It was a clutch my seat moment. I mean, you take it for granted now.
Yeah.
But when you see it on the big screen, it is a pressure cooker from the get.
Yeah.
And James Cameron knows how to eat. And this is where, action horror lives here.
Yep.
Right. This is
Right.
And I have a couple. My fallback position is another fun, but it's also, it's exciting, it's scary, it's fun. I mean, these movies tend to be, and like a roller coaster. I like roller coasters.
Yeah.
And I think for the same reason, I like that adrenaline kick. But I think when I was watching this the first time, my jaw was just dropped, I
totally agree.
It was for a movie that's that long. It's a long movie.
Yep.
And the director's cut is a really long movie, but it doesn't feel like it because and after you're done, you realize what you went through, and you're just like, oh, what a movie. So, anyways, Aliens
for sure.
Liz.
Okay. I went on this a little bit different because when I looked up sensation seeking, it says it's defined as the seeking of varied, novel, complex, and intense sensations and experiences, and the willingness to take physical, social, legal, and financial risks for the sake of such experience. So I picked Hostel.
Oh,
this is about people who are taking all of these risks, especially financial, for the sake of intense experiences. So it's not me getting you get it watching these kids try to escape, but the characters in the film are paying to murder people for their sensation seeking.
Yep. So it's actually interesting because it's both the antagonist and the protaist who are
sensation seeking. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
It's interesting, Liz, that researcher that I was talking about, Marvin Zuckerman, who came up with the whole concept of sensation seeking in the context of horror films. He actually talked about a couple different derivations of sensation seeking, and one of the ones he talked about was like seeking out gambling or risky sexual situations or the sort of thing. So not a literal kind of roller coaster as sort of Eric and I described, but kind of some of the things you were describing, which is different types of sensations that aren't necessarily like fast-paced sensations, but they are definitely sensations nonetheless. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with the way that you broke that down, Liz. That's pretty cool.
Cool, thank you. All right. Oh, and I'm on the next one
Yep.
because our next one is called Gender Socialization Theory, which is quote unquote snuggle theory and gender
Aw.
roles.
Hey.
So, snuggle theory is defined as a rite of passage for young people to fulfill traditional gender roles. So, the film that I chose for this is The Babysitter. 'Cause we have
Okay.
Cole,
Right.
who's a 12-year-old boy who at first he's with the babysitter, he loves her, then shit hits the fan and he's protecting the girl who's in his class who he likes, who's the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
He has to face his fears to kind of quote unquote man up
Yeah.
and put down the bullies and things like that. So I thought that was just a whole rite of passage for a young guy for traditional gender roles of, come on, you've got to stop being a baby. You're 12 years old. It's time to toughen up and defend your house and drive the car and stop being scared. And so that is why I picked The Babysitter.
All right. I picked the 2017 American black comedy slasher film Happy Death Day,
Good
starring
one.
Jessica Roth
Yeah.
and Israel Broussard. This, of course, follows a college student who is murdered on the night of her birthday, and she has to relive that same night over and over and over. And I was like, well, it's got young girl sort of, becoming a woman who is after a young man. And I mean, this to me seems both from the from the context of the film itself, sort of like these normalizing these various, very staid sort of gender roles, but then externally looking at this film, it pops up on a lot of like romantic date night movies. Like this is a movie you should watch with your date, which is funny because I looked at a number of different date night movie lists, and invariably almost all these sort of date night snuggle movie lists involved The Conjuring, and I'm like, hell no.
No,
Well, that's because they're
is
like, you're going to get, someone's going to be on your lap.
Right.
Like under the blanket, scared.
I
So you're gonna
suppose
get
it could be
literally
like
snuggled.
maybe a play to like get the turn the TV off. Be like, hell no, I'm not watching that. Let's do something different.
Right.
Wink, wink. But yeah, like, why would you ever show somebody The Conjuring as a sort of date night film?
That's when you've been married for a couple of years and now you're like, let's have date night. We
Right.
don't- Watching The Conjuring.
So, this was a kind of a curious one for me because I'm gonna treat this in two different ways.
Yeah.
And since we're doing so good on time,
Yes.
I think I've got enough cushion to do this.
Yes.
So
you
my
do.
my first one that I'm going to mention is Prince of Darkness, and this is from a personal experience because personal memories of going to a movie with a big group and having two young women, one on either side of me.
Oh, right.
This was Anne and Nancy. And you were at this too, and Jared
Wilson
and Chris
and
Ralph.
Hart.
We all went to this
Anna
thing.
Nancy Wilson from Heart. Yeah.
I think Anne Rohr and Nancy Spellman. But there were moments in that where all of a sudden I would have both of them sort of like leaping on me at the same time, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah.
and it was the whole thing of date night at the horror movies, and it was like, wow, that's a and I normally don't the thing now is if I go on a horror date with like Amy, it's
Right.
like she's a hardened soul and she'll cackle through the whole thing. Right. It's like, all right, well, all right, that's a little different. You're not she ain't scared of nothing. But sometimes you won't. When the gender roles, it's like I'm going to be the tough guy in the theater, and nothing's going to scare me. And then the girls go, and then they go. It's like, oh, protect me, kind of a thing.
Right.
And that was sort of some of the gist that I was picking up from that gender socialization theory.
Yep.
But I also liked the way that that Liz picked up on this, in that if I'm treating it as the movie doing it,
Right.
I'm going to go back to something that I mentioned in Ho 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 Horror.
Yes.
Which was Better Watch Out.
Oh yeah.
Which was about the 12-year-old boy Luke,
Yep.
who's got the hots for his babysitter.
It's very similar to The Babysitter.
Very
for
similar
sure.
to the babysitter, but he does not.
With a twist.
But he does it. He does the wrong thing. Where the babysitter, it's he's actually not that. He's not an evil kid. Luke's an evil kid,
Right.
And he's in the wrong. And Ashley has to battle against this kid who does not know how to handle his own hormones.
Right.
So I think that I think I would go. I as soon as you started going down that path, it's like ooh,
Yeah.
I've got one.
Yeah.
For that.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right.
And then
So the eighth
The
and
eighth one-
final psychological
Topic.
horror profile is
this is one of my favorite ones. This is societal fears. This is
Yeah. Heck
reflection of what our culture, what our anxieties are. Horror movies often have something to say about the state of current affairs.
Yep.
And whether this is ecological horror, the fear of the atomic weaponry, fear of communists, the fear of racism, or just pure xenophobia.
Yep.
The fear of disease, fear of immigrants, or the government.
Yep.
There are plenty of things in this world to be afraid of, and you can play this out as a metaphor for greater things. With horror, the metaphor can be a blunt instrument, but when it's cleverly reflected, it can reinforce existing fears or even elevate them.
Yep.
Yes, and so
yes.
they tap into what makes us uncomfortable in our day-to-day lives. And so I had a number of ones that I could have picked for this one. I'm going with Cloverfield.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
As the 9/11 reaction,
Yeah.
right? And it the destruction of Manhattan from a first person, one of the best shaky cam things without making the shaky cam seem cheap.
Yeah.
And but the kind of fears that played out that I'm sure that New Yorkers went through when the trade centers went down. And everybody else going, oh my God, what's coming?
This is a dumb question, but was J.J. Abrams actually using Cloverfield as an allegory for 9/11?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and
Like that was an intended thing.
it was an intentional kind of thing. And it wasn't it and when you see, because you get the ground perspective when they go out on the street and the Statue of Liberty head lands on the ground and they look up and they see the monster just tearing through.
Yeah.
And it's just knocking buildings down. And it's not like Godzilla, right? It's not like
Yeah.
stompy, and you get the bird's eye perspective of see the creature tearing through the city. It's the same view that from the footage that you saw when the ash and the concrete came rushing and the people were just fleeing like crazy because they didn't know what was happening. And and I thought so Cloverfield.
Well, that's kind of the ultimate escapism / rationalization of a real world incident.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, because you're taking that and you're saying, okay, well here's a way that you can actually digest this.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, you could say what was it, United? What was the
United 93?
Yeah, that's a hard watch.
Yeah, it is.
That's
It is.
In a way, it's a horror movie.
Right. It is. Yeah.
No happy endings there.
Right.
So, so Liz, what have you got?
Okay, I picked 2002's Cabin Fever because they isolate and quarantine each other based on this flesh-eating bacteria.
Yucky.
And it's also hilarious.
Pre-COVID
So
COVID.
I guess I went with, it's pre-COVID COVID, flesh-eating virus. Way back in the day. The only way to survive it is to only drink beer. So that I've been doing for the past 18 months.
I almost went with The Fly for the same reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just allegories for sickness and health issues. And I think for The Fly it was AIDS. I don't know if do you think that was about? When did
I don't know. The
Cabin
Fly
Fever was
was,
like
I think
the 80,
Cabin Fever was
87.
2002.
Yeah, so this one, The Fly was really in the height of the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So but yeah, fast forward to 2020.
Fast forward to 2020. So 18 years after Cabin Fever was made.
Yep.
We're living it. We're locking each other in sheds and saying, "Get away from me." And
I'm
don't
pretty
come
sure
near me. Yeah.
if COVID-19 treated us like the Cabin Fever virus, you would have nobody complaining about getting vaccinations.
Oh, hell
That
no.
is true.
It's like, I'm getting a vaccination right now. Give me
That
double
is
dose.
true.
Although you think
100%.
you would think death would be a pretty compelling thing, but
Yeah.
apparently it's not.
No,
But it's
I think,
not. You
I
have
think,
to be literally have your skin peeling off.
Yeah, just
Then
remember,
death.
I think even like just like if it resembled smallpox, people would do it.
Right.
Anyways, so Mike, what's
There's
your
so many serious things we could have done here, so I decided to lighten it up a little bit.
sure?
Yes.
No, love
Let's
cabin
see
fever.
if Mike will take it down.
Yes, the ultimate in societal fear is
Yeah.
1978's Dawn of the Dead. You had mindless consumerism. You had inherent greed. You had humanity's propensity for violence,
Against each
war,
other. Yeah.
possessions. You had law enforcement gone wild, and you had the role of media in the collapse of society. I mean, this really had it had it all.
Yeah.
Had it all.
And there's even I mean at the front end of the film too. There's even sort of a whole kind of treatise on immigration and the role of race and class in society.
And law enforcement.
Yeah, and law enforcement. Yeah, law enforcement gone wild. Yeah, I mean, this really has it all as a societal feel. I don't think you could pack.
Yeah.
I don't think a film has ever packed this much of a societal fear into a single film.
Well, and then there were also, I think the, the redneck shooters.
Yeah,
Right. And
exactly.
that was like, and the whole thing of, and we're talking, wasn't necessarily, it was a sideways glance at sort of an ugly period of potential of racism kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But and the casualness of it all, and the bikers,
Right.
and what that represented,
Right, right.
and fears of anarchy,
Yeah,
right? All
yeah.
it was just so many things, and he did it, and it's all seamless.
Yeah. And it's all packaged up into a nice little hour and 40-minute little bundle. Although if you watch the extended version or the Italian version, you're probably looking at more than 2 hours of societal fears in 1978's Dawn of the Dead.
All right, so
All right, I feel better just having discussed all this.
it's a cleansing.
I feel better. I feel there's been catharsis. I feel snuggled. I feel
You feel purged.
I feel purged. I feel sensational. I feel realigned. I feel it all.
That's right. We're here to help you.
Yeah.
Listen,
here to
folks.
help.
That's right. We are your counselors for the next 2 weeks, and then we're just going to get back to the same old routine. But so Liz, what we've got? We have one of our
affiliate partners.
affiliates, yeah.
So not only are we going to help counsel you with your fears, we're going to save you money on awesome horror stuff. 'Cause we have a discount to Fangoria. So if you go over to fangoria.com and use the code TST20, that stands for the Scariest Things 20, you get 20% off of all the merch except for subscriptions, but you can get shirts, bags, mugs, single issues if you got to fill in the gap of your subscriptions. They have stickers, they have all sorts of cool stuff. So head over there and pick up some merch. They got new stuff, and
it's
if you don't have Fangoria, you got to get the back issues.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it is it's been the standard bearer for 40 years.
40 years.
And it is now, in an age where print journalism has gone away, they've upped their game, and they're giving you a premium package of the magazine, and it's
thick paper, gorgeous, amazing articles and things in every single one. And it's worth the money.
And they
even have merch.
I think they have a couple of these left. There's a really wild-looking psychedelic wine glass. So if you need a psychedelic, multicolored Fangoria wine glass, they've got
your Crystal Lake wine.
For your Crystal Lake wine,
perfect. Yes.
Oh yes, they've got one. And there are still some available. They said they were going fast, but there are still some available. So if anyone wants to get me a Christmas present, I could go for a Fangoria psychedelic colored wine glass so I can put my Crystal Lake wine right on in it.
There you go. All right, folks. So the next time we talk to you, we're going to be bringing to you our end of the year roundup.
Get ready.
All
There's
right.
some doozies.